G'day, battlers, and today we're going to be revisiting the Love Cup for 2023 edition of the Meta Simplified video. And to be honest, a lot of it's the same, but there are definitely a couple of move changes, move additions, wing attack being the sort of big change since the last time Love Cup came around. So to this video, we're going to take a look at what's sort of good and how the meta is sort of going to roll out. Now, I'm just on Leak Duck at the moment because if we scroll down, they've actually got a list of the eligible Pokemon. So the Love Cup, instead of being typing based, it is color based. So all of the Pokemon that are colored either red or pink based on the sort of official Pokedex colors are eligible for this cup. That's it, red and pink. Now the big sort of question mark is the fact that the orange, well, Pokemon doesn't consider orange to be a color, so a lot of orange Pokemon just file under the red category. So like Charizard, for example, it's red. So Leak Ducks here just got sort of a list of all of the red Pokemon that are eligible. Well, all of the red Pokemon, hence a lot of the Pokemon that are eligible, and then the pink Pokemon, and that's the other half of the Pokemon that are eligible. So it's a little, there's a little daunting, and it's a little unclear what's good here. I mean, we're seeing things like Wurmple on this list because they're red, so they're eligible. So I think let's just jump straight into the Meta Simplified infographic and take a sort of look at what we can expect here. And bada bing, bada boom, for the thumbnail. All right, so we've got a heart-shaped graphic here. Hopefully that doesn't distract from what the arrows are actually saying too much. I know I'm sort of stealing from my PvP Academia a little bit here and going for the shaped infographic, but as I was drawing it, it just sort of worked out and I couldn't resist. So here we are with the graphic regardless, and we have 5 main groups over yonder, and then we have a couple of extra Pokemon down below us as well. So over on the far left, we've got the fighters in Scrafty and Medicham. Following along towards me, we have the fire flyers, so Charizard and Talonflame. A little bit further, it's a little bit unclear what to name this group, so I'm just going to call them the anti-waters for now, because they do beat the water types, but it's sort of a weird grouping. So it's Electrode, Lurantis, and Ariados. Back down to the bottom left, we've got the Charmers, well, the fairy types, I should say. One of those Pokemon is not going to be running Charm in this meta. Well, you can, but not the recommended moveset. With Aromatisse, I think that's how you say it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really know Pokemon. What am I doing here? Why do I have a YouTube channel talking about Pokemon? Also, Sylveon and Wigglytuff are over in that group. And then bottom right-hand corner, we've got the water types. So we've got Seeking, Triple Legacy Seeking. So that's Poison Jab, Drill Run, Icy Wind. And then we've also got Milotic and Alola Mola hanging out as well to round out the heart-shaped graphic. So Love Cup is a very fast move-based meta. And that definitely hasn't changed, although Charizard getting a wing attack buff, getting a little bit energy, a little bit faster, means that there might be a couple extra charge moves being thrown around. So maybe it's slowly moving further away from the fast move meta. I guess that also the fact that Charm has been nerfed. So there's a couple of reasons why it's going to be a little bit different here. But anyway, let's start off focusing in on the fighters. So the fighters, again, hopefully you can sort of see that the arrows have been curved up, but they're losing to the flyers, which sort of makes sense. They're just going to have that flying damage to beat them up, and the fire damage really does hurt. They're just sort of able to out damage, essentially, even though Medicham is quite bulky. They're also going to lose to the fairy types, as you'd sort of expect, and then they're going to be beating the water types down in the bottom right. That's sort of just the fighting type is a really weird group in that there's not steel types running around to beat, there's not rock types, there's not ice types. It's just sort of the fact that they're providing neutral damage and there's sort of a little bit of bulk there. So they're not like the cornerstone of the meta, but Medicham really, much more than Scrafty, earns a serious spot in this meta just because of its bulk and its sort of versatility in moveset. So don't expect to not see very many Medichams, even though, I mean, Medicham's one of those Pokemon in the Open Great League that beats a lot of Pokemon by a little bit and loses to a lot of Pokemon by a little bit. It's not really made for these sort of hard yes or no matchups, except for the fairy rolls, which the fairy types sort of beat it pretty bad. But regardless, they're just sort of neutral picks that are really going to be probably Pokemon that are used by high skill trainers a little bit more, just because they're able to sort of win out those dynamic matchups. Now, moving on to the fire types, it's a little more easy to understand what they're doing here. They beat the fighters. They also actually beat the top right-hand group, which has Lurantis and Ariados in it. Now, Charizard is actually able to beat Electrode, which I sort of found a little bit odd. I kind of just assumed Electric type versus Flyer, Electric probably wins. But it is a little bit of an energy, a baity, what move gets thrown, what move lands sort of question. But Charizard can win that one out, which is why I was sort of comfortable having the arrow go that way. The fires, because they resist fairy damage, are also going to be beating the fairy types. So they're sort of a little bit like a bodyguard to the fighters, because they then lose to the water types. So fighters beat waters, waters beat fires. So the fires and the fighters sort of pair up pretty nicely as sort of a good one-to-one pair. Then the top right group, we've got Ariados, who's got some poison damage, so that's why it's sort of good against the fairy types. We've then got Lurantis, who's got Leaf Blade and Superpower. Leaf Blade going to be good against the water types. Superpower not really hitting a whole lot in this meta. Like, it definitely does a good chunk of neutral damage. Things like Scrafty are not really going to enjoy seeing it, but it's sort of just going to be where you are in the matchup, depending on what move you throw. Again, in the same way that the fighters don't really have like solid targets to hit, it's kind of a similar spot. Lurantis is just able to be a little bit dynamic and do a lot of damage without taking super effective from too much in this meta. There's certainly a couple like the Fireflies. Then Electrode is actually, the PvP poke recommended moveset is ditching Foul Play, so going for Discharge Hyper Beam, just because there's not really any ghosts or whatnot that are around to get hit by Foul Play. There's fairy types that aren't going to take very much from it. So Discharge is sort of like the sort of main and neutral move to have, and Hyper Beam just sort of helps it shore up some of the matchups in this meta. But together, they're all sort of generally going to be beating the fairies, and then also going to be beating the water types. The fairies can have a lot of play back though, so it's a little bit energy dependent, except for Ariados, who pretty much always wins those matchups, but definitely be a little bit careful with Electrode or Lurantis, because it doesn't always go that way, although in general, that's sort of like, if you had to flip a coin, you'd probably bet on the top right-hand group here, the anti-waters, as I call them, which is a pretty bad name. Then we've got the fairies, so Aromatisse and Wigglytuff are just classic charmers. They do charm things. They beat the fighters, they lose to the fires because fire resists charm. But then Quick Attack is actually the recommended moveset on Sylveon. So Quick Attack obviously got buffed in the last Go Battle League move update. Was that alongside Wing Attack? I think it might have been, actually. Unless it was the one before. I can't quite remember. It was months ago now. We're about due for another move update, less than a month away. So we'll see how this all goes. But regardless, Quick Attack, you can run Charm as well. It doesn't really matter. Like, it's going to be running relatively similarly. It's just that, obviously, the fire types aren't going to be resisting Quick Attack, and you're going to be able to get to Psyshocks, which might potentially win out a matchup if you, that you might not have won if you were running Charm, Moonblast as your sort of only port of call. They're also generally going to lose to the water types, which is a little bit close, but the waters actually just have a lot of bulk to them, and they're sort of able to out damage. I think that it's a matchup that might have gone the other way pre-Charm nerf, but with the Charm nerf, the waters are just sort of able to force their way through. I mean, Sea King's got Poison Jab, so it's like dominating, but Milotic and Alomomola generally just sort of force their way through. And then the waters, they beat the fires, they lose the electrics, the grasses, they beat the charmers, as we just said, and then generally counted down by the fighters. So I know, it's been 8 minutes now. A lot of this graphic isn't as... I mean, a lot of the matchups are sort of straightforward, like, flyers beat fighters, fighters lose to fairies. But there's a lot of sort of dynamic-y sort of neutral matchups, like, the fighters versus the waters, the electric Ariados, Lurantis combo, sort of generally beating the fairies. But to be honest, it's a meta that's going to devolve pretty quickly. And we've got a couple of core breakers that are definitely going to be a part of that. They're going to be Lickitung and Chansey, who are just normal type bulk fiends. If you have no respect for your own personal time, then they're probably great to play with, because they will just stretch out your sets to 15 hours to actually finish all 25 of your battles. So if you really want to go that way and make everyone hate you, maybe force some top lefts out of frustration, there might be some ways to go. But it will definitely suck in those fighters even more if you start to go that way. Metacham and Scrafty are going to have a field day against you. We also have Trash Wormadam, who was on the main graphic when I did this 2 years ago, but it's sort of fallen off a little bit. It's still a pretty useful Pokemon and quite a good core breaker, in my opinion, because it's got Confusion, it's got Iron Head, it's got Bug Buzz as well, which hits like Lurantis. It hits the Scrafty. Well, Scrafty's neutral, isn't it? I think it's neutral against Scrafty and Metacham, because Psychic type and Dark type. But yeah, it's sort of just a very dynamic Pokemon. It's not taking super effective from much, because Charizard is sort of recommended to go for Wing Attack instead of Fire Spin now. If it was going for Fire Spin, like, you just melt away, and you're still pretty scared of a Blast Burn. Well, very scared of a Blast Burn from Charizard. But overall, it's still a really good Pokemon, and I wouldn't discount it, and definitely something to consider putting on your team. And then last one I've plopped in the Core Breakers box is Galarian Slowbro. poison jab damage. Poison going to be really good against the fairies, and it's just sort of a fun Pokemon. I've always liked the Slowpokes. If you're a long time subscriber of the channel, you probably know that. And one thing that I sort of wanted to top this video off with is this graphic from Go Stadium from, I think it was like 2 years ago, but essentially it was running down a lot of the sort of degenerate ABB teams that are sort of available in this meta. So like, you know, there's a Grass Hole, Charm Pit, Fish Hole, Buzz Hole, Fire in the Hole, Rock Hole, Slow Hole, Tongue Hole, Hole Puncher, Stall Hole, Electric Hole, Enthotectic Hole. Just sort of fun teams for the most part. You know, I don't know about Stall Hole. I don't know if I recommend that one, but there's definitely some fun teams in here, like Slow Hole, that can definitely be a little bit fun. It is a little out of date, because like I don't think Galarian Slowbro and the like were released at the time they made this graphic, but I'll link in the description down below anyway. And if they make some updated graphics, which they very well might, I'll definitely look forward to it and be sharing that around as well. But with that said, that's sort of my Love Cup Meta Simplified in a nutshell. I feel like it wasn't as clear as, I don't feel like I had as much clarity as I usually do in these videos, but hopefully you've been able to pick out something from it. Let me know if it was just complete nonsense and you've just wasted 11 minutes in the comments down below, and apologies if that is the case. But thank you for watching nonetheless, and don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, especially that subscribe one, and thank you to my patrons and supporters over on YouTube as well. Don't forget to join the Discord, link in the description, because when's this being uploaded? I think a day and a half from now-ish. I'm going to be hosting a live Naiad Cup tournament. So I'll be battling, sort of going through what's going through my head as we go through the battles, and then I'll be streaming that over on Twitch as well. So, yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy the Love Cup. Hopefully you don't use Chansey and Lickitung.